Let's get some reaction to that, and also, of course, what we heard from the Fed as well. Nick Twydale joining us from FP Markets. Nick, welcome. So, those jobs numbers.
Yes.
Interesting to see both unemployment and jobs rising at the same time.
Doesn't quite make too much sense for us, and it doesn't make it very easy for a trader because you'd like to see it both hitting both sides. So yeah, the unemployment rate's up to 3.9. I think we're expecting at 3.8. But those full-time employment numbers are massive, and I'm kind of surprised because I think the feeling on the street is there's been a few people losing work recently. So. Interesting move, and Aussie's come back slightly better bid, so I think it's taking those jobs numbers to slightly outweigh the increase in the unemployment rate. We're sitting at fairly crucial highs in the Aussie as well, so if it does start to break through and motor through 67 cents, then it really could get a lift on, and obviously part of that comes with the fact that we've got a massive amount of dollar selling coming through the market after the Fed as well.
Well, yeah, let's go to that point. Now, clearly that takes the lead off the Aussie to an extent too, given the US dollar is falling with, it's been termed as the policy pivot from the Fed. Certainly that market reaction would indicate that too. What was your reaction to what we heard from the Fed?
I was quite surprised because I think myself and I think most of the market, probably yourself, we thought we might have a little bit of a break pulling from Jerome Powell and just saying, hold on, don't get carried away. The market's been kind of pricing this in for the last 6 months or so, and stock markets are through the roof. I think the Dow hit another record overnight. But they've sort of, they've given it the big tick. It's like an early Christmas present. You're surprised the mistletoe wasn't out for these meetings. But obviously US markets have had a fantastic reaction, and the Fed's shown us 75 basis points of cuts coming in next year. So it's kind of opened the floodgates, I think.
Well, it supports that Goldilocks view of the economy, doesn't it?
It does. It's like soft landing's definitely going to happen, and I think we were talking in the break. My usual sceptical self may not see all that rosiness around the corner, but for the moment, I think you've got to trade what you see, and it's risk on and sell dollars. US yields are probably going to come off even further. They got a good smack last night, and stock markets are going to remain bid.
So where to for the US dollar? Is it going to continue?
I think so.
Weakness from here?
Yeah, and I think that what we've just seen in the Aussie today is we've got some fairly key tier one data, and we've got three massive central bank rate announcements and press conferences and statements in Europe as well. But I think the underlying move will be to try and sell dollars on the day. Interestingly enough, there's a few currencies when I came in this morning. Aussie was one of them, Kiwi was another, and dollar yen, all sitting on they'd slowed up after the initial move post-Fed around fairly key technical levels. But I think you could, if you start to see some breaks, and it happens in one or two, and then maybe we see stuff in Europe as well. Dollar Swiss, I was mentioning, is on a fairly key support level as well, as is Euro Swiss. We start to see some of those moves, then I think the market could really get going, and the dollar could take a real battering into Christmas.
Yeah, we're a lot of currencies on watch at the moment because of how many central banks are making their decisions. You mentioned the Swiss bank, the ECB,
Bank
the Bank
of
England, Swedish, Norwegian. Yeah. There's a few to consider at the moment. So what are the key currencies you're going to be watching then?
So I think, like I said, from a technical perspective and from some of the flow we've seen in the market, the Swissy is going to be, normally it's sort of the one we all palm off a bit, but I think Swiss could be very interesting. I think Norges Bank as well. It's interesting to see how many of these central banks are not moving in tandem with each other when we normally see that pack mentality. And there does seem to be that breakdown, and obviously the big breakdown is the Fed, but the RBA here as well. We're going to see another hike from those, but probably. But I think tonight really the Swiss, ECB is crucial, but I think to me Europe's probably still in a little bit of trouble. So it's going to be interesting it's going to be more on what they say, I think. And Bank of England always there's a bit of disparity there. I think for the major currencies though, even though these are big calls, I think with what we've seen from the Fed, everyone's still going to be looking to sell dollars. So even if you do get some moves from those central banks, that they're just going to give you better levels to sell dollars for the next few sessions.
Nick, the RBA, potentially something of an outlier among global central banks now. Given that prospect, hasn't ruled out another rate hike, of course, but sort of maintaining that we're not going to see any cuts next year, or if we are, very late. How supportive of that would that be for the Aussie dollar?
I think that's going to be incredibly supportive. And from that RBA stance, and now because of the Fed stance, when we look at it against the US dollar, I think it's going to really, really lift it. The outlier, of course, is going to be if global growth concerns start to hit the market again, and Aussie will always suffer that. So keep an eye on commodities, keep an eye on China and the global growth story. But from an interest rate differential perspective, I think the Aussie's got some good upside, especially in the next sort of 2 to 3 weeks into the new year. I don't think we're going to see too much more. It's a very data heavy week this week, and it will start to fade off as we hit the end of the year. So I think from a fundamental perspective, I think you're going to be looking to buy Aussie against the dollar on dips now for the next few weeks.